Hey there, 5-1 Youth. Welcome back to the sixth installment of our Doubt It series, where we're answering questions about Christianity that you guys submitted. Our question today is very relevant with the COVID-19 outbreak affecting everyone. The question is, how can we trust God when times are hard? This is a great question because when things are good, it's really easy to trust God. When life is going our way and we're feeling blessed, it almost seems obvious that God is real and that He loves us. However, when our circumstances change and we fall in hard times, it becomes a lot more difficult to believe those things. In fact, when we're in the midst of a hard season, we might find ourselves thinking thoughts like, God, if you're real, why would you allow this to happen to me? Or God, when I look at the situation of my life, it sure doesn't seem like you care about me or that you love me. These are very human thoughts to have. Human beings, we are weak creatures. We're puny little things made of squishy flesh, and so it's hard for us to stay constant and strong when the world around us seems to be falling apart. However, it's in these moments of struggle and catastrophe that God is actually most at work in our lives. You see, God uses difficult situations to bring out what's really in our hearts. God tests us by bringing us through the fire to see if our faith is really sincere. Nobody understood this better than Jesus himself. Jesus went from being the most popular man in Jerusalem on Palm Sunday to being the most hated man on Good Friday. Jesus understood that people are fickle and our faith often wavers. In his famous parable of the sower, Jesus compared those who only have faith when things are good to rocky soil, where a plant can spring up quickly, but when the situation gets hot, it withers and dies because it has no roots. So how can we avoid being like the rocky soil? How can we develop deep spiritual roots that will carry us through even the most difficult situations? Well, there's lots of different ways, but the three I want you to take away from this video are: 1, to pray; 2, to look back on what God has already done; and 3, to surround yourself with loving Christian community. We should pray because it's one of the most powerful tools that we have in our arsenal. Prayer gives us a direct line of communication to the God who is in control of everything. And when we pray, our circumstances change. Sometimes our prayers get answered exactly how we want them to. Other times they don't, but no matter what, prayer always brings us closer to God. And that's the most important thing when we're going through a tough time. We want to keep that line of communication and connection open with God. And that's what we do. That's what we do when we pray. The second thing we should do is look back on the things that God has already done. The Bible is full of stories where God took his people out of the most desperate and difficult situations and brought them into a new place of abundance and life. We can think of how God led the Israelites out of Egypt, out of slavery, and through the wilderness into the promised land. Or we can think about how God used the little shepherd boy David to defeat the mighty Goliath. Or we can think about how God called Elijah to preserve the faith when the rest of Israel had gone astray. The Bible is full of stories where God took his people out of difficult situations and brought them into a new life of abundance. We don't even need to look at the Bible to have these stories. Chances are, if you're going through something hard, it's not the first time it's happened. And there were previous times where God got you through a hard time and brought you to where you are today. So think back on those times where you were struggling and you didn't know what to do and how God was there for you. And this isn't going to be the last time that you're struggling either. So when you're in a difficult situation, I encourage you to keep a journal. Write down what you're going through. Write down how God is working so that next time you're in a hard situation, you can look back on this one and remember how God met you and lifted you up in the midst of it. And finally, the third thing we should do is surround ourselves with loving Christian community. When we're struggling, we have a tendency to want to isolate ourselves and run away from the world. However, we need to resist the temptation to shut things out, because what we really need when we're struggling is for people to speak life and encouragement and to uplift us. There's always a possibility that we can slip into a depression when we isolate ourselves. However, when we're surrounded with people who love us and care about us and who are encouraging us, the possibility of that happening becomes a lot smaller. So surround yourself with people who can speak those words of encouragement and uplifting things to you so that you can make it through whatever it is that you're going through. And when those people are talking to you, they can also give you advice and wisdom and guidance about how to take the next step to get out of whatever it is you're struggling with. So to sum up, there are lots of different ways that we can get out of difficult situations, but the three I want you to take away from this video are: one, to pray. God hears your prayers, and prayers change your situation. Two, to remember what God has already done. The Bible is full of amazing stories of redemption that God has done to take people out of hard situations and bring them into good ones. And even think about the times in your own life where God has done just that. And finally, surround yourself with loving Christian community. God has put those people in your life to help support you. You can lean on your community. You can trust those around you to help lift you up when you're feeling down. All right, so this is actually going to be the last Doubt It video that we do for this week. Next week, I'm going to come back with another series of videos about creative ways to study the Bible. However, all the things that we've talked about in these videos can always be addressed in more depth than what we've talked about in this short time. So if you have more questions or you want to talk about any of these things further, please reach out to Pastor Christopher and me, and we would love to talk to you. Keep submitting questions onto the Discord, and I'll try and get around and answer more of them as time goes on. But until next week, I'll see you then. Bye-bye.